everyone, this is Cheryl and welcome to my sewing room. You're looking at an old shirt of mine that I've had for quite a long time. It's getting real tired looking, old, it's got a stain on it, but I really like it. It's so comfortable, but it is time to move on. So I'm going to show you how to take an old shirt of yours and show you how to turn it into something like this. It's not that difficult. Make sure you pick out a shirt that just has a few pieces, not a lot of things stitched together, especially if this is your first time making clothing. So let's get started. I have selected a very basic cotton shirt. It has wide dolman sleeves. My sleeves are not set in. In other words, there's no seam here connecting the sleeve to the top. So it's really simple. If you are selecting a knit shirt to copy and you want to make it out of cotton, that's not going to work so well because that's a redesign of the shirt, because the knit is going to stretch to get it over your head, whereas the cotton does not. So if you're selecting a knit, then select a knit fabric. We're going to draw the pattern for the front side of the shirt first. So have the back side of your fabric facing up and smooth it all out. Make sure the seams are straight, everything is lined up at the shoulders. Then take it and fold it in half. So if there's a sleeve, bring the sleeve over to meet the other sleeve. Line up the shoulders again. This is real important. Otherwise things are going to be lopsided. And then line up your sides. Take your time. Make sure everything is lined up because you want it to fit. Up here at the neckline, I want you to look at it. You'll notice that the back of the shirt is higher than the front. So when we're doing the pattern for the front, you're going to be focusing on this part here. You're not going to be tracing around this. Now place your shirt along the edge of your paper. Now the paper that I'm using is just wrapping paper. I'm writing on the back of it. You can use packing paper, butcher's paper, or tape pieces of paper together, whatever is easiest for you. The center of my shirt does not have a seam. So I'm going to place the center of the shirt right on the edge of my paper. And just always take your time lining things up. Now get something heavy to weight your pattern down. Now I have these magnetic pin pads all over my sewing room, so I'm just going to use these to help hold things in place. Here is the neckline of the front. So in order for me to trace around this neckline, I'm just going to tuck it under the back piece so that I can see where the neckline is. So I'm going to use this seam gauge here because I want to bring the neckline up just a little bit for me. So I'm going to bring it up about a ½ inch. That's all I want to do. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to place the seam gauge on the edge of the shirt, place a mark, and continue to move your seam gauge a little bit at a time. Because there is a seam here, I'm going to go out 5/8 here because in most clothing there is a 5/8 of an inch seam. So go down the length of the shoulder sleeve area. Now mark the end of your sleeves, if you have them, if that's what you're tracing around. Because these are not set in sleeves, there's just going to be a gentle curve. So I'm first starting out with kind of a straight line, and then as I get closer to that curved edge, you're going to move your seam gauge a little less. You're going to keep your little marks a little closer together because you want to make that curved as close to what's there. The very bottom edge of this shirt is just serged using a serger, and it has lace stitched over that. So I folded the lace under and then traced to the as close as I could to the bottom of the shirt. I also have a little opening here and it ties. So I'm just going to put a mark on the shirt to indicate where that opening falls down to. Take your shirt and set it aside and mark those areas that you need to make sure you place them correctly on your fabric. This is my fold edge. I've never written upside down before. Okay, so here's my fold. So that is going to be placed on the folded edge of fabric. Here are the sides, marking sides. Here's the hem, and then shoulders, and then neck. And also right front on the pattern. Next step is do the pattern for the back. So fold your shirt with the front sides coming together. My shirt has a seam in the back, so I did not put the edge of the shirt on the edge of the paper. So, and I labeled it center seam, so you know that that's something you have to stitch, and I went out 5/8 of an inch from the edge and put my marks. Go ahead and label it back and anything else you need to label. This particular top took about 1 2/3 yard of fabric. So here is the piece for the back. Remember, it has a seam, so it's not placed on the fold. Then over here is my piece for the front, and it is going to be on the fold line. Remember at the front I have a small little opening that goes down. What I want to do is take a fabric marking pin and just mark where that little opening ends so I know where to cut down to. You can either pin your pattern down. I'm just using my magnetic pin pads as weights, or use other items that are heavy that you can place around your pattern. You can use scissors if you like, but I like using the rotary cutter because I get a nice clean edge. So I'm just going to cut near the edge of that pattern all the way around. I've just finished cutting it all out. This is my fabric pieces for the back, and my first step is to do that center seam going down the back. So bring front sides together of your fabrics. I'm going to use a serger, which is an overlock machine that binds the edges. If you do not have a serger, you can still do this and stitch 5/8 inch of a seam all the way down that center seam. If your fabric is a knit, then you don't need to necessarily serge the edges. But if you're doing a cotton, then I would at least do a zigzag stitch if you do not have a serger. Here's my serged seam, so if you've never noticed how your clothes are put together, the ones you've bought, that's what it is. This is the front, so the next piece that I'm going to stitch around is this opening here in the front. There's 1/4 inch bias tape on it. I've pinned the bias tape on the back side of the shirt. Here's the front side of the shirt now. So I'm bringing the bias tape around from the back over the edge to the front, and then stitch close to the edge of the bias tape. On the original shirt, there's just a little tiny seam right there, and that helps to keep it in that little V shape. Now bring the front sides together of both the front and back section and stitch the shoulder seams on both shoulders. And again, I'm serging my seams, but if you don't have a serger, do 5/8 of an inch seam. Now I have the back side of the shirt up and I have it completely opened out. And it's easier to finish off your neckline if your side seams are not stitched in just yet. So always do the neckline first before you stitch your side seams. So I'm going to finish putting the bias tape around the neckline, and I'm going to start in this side of the neckline in the front, stitch it all the way around to this side. After your neckline is done, bring front sides together and match up your side seams. And again, do a 5/8 of an inch seam around there or use your serger. A suggestion I have for you, in case you're not sure if this is going to fit, then I recommend just doing a machine basting stitch on both edges, then try it on to see if it fits, and if you need to let it out or take it in a little bit, you're going to save yourself a lot of seam ripping later. The basting stitches are very easy to pull out. After I finished my side seams, I went ahead and serged around the ends of the sleeves and the bottom, and then I tried it on just to make sure of the length, and I wound up cutting a little bit more off the sleeves and the bottom. So now I'm going to add the lace trim, and I'm only going to overlap it about 1/4 of an inch and stitch right on the top edge of the lace trim all the way around both sleeves and the bottom edge. Right now I'm putting the lace trim on one of the sleeves. Here is the seam that goes underneath the armhole. So place the lace on the edge, overlapping it, but you don't want to start right where that seam begins. You want to go out an inch or so and stitch it down all the way around, and then stop a few inches from the armhole seam again. Then take the lace and overlap the ends by about 1/2 inch. Cut the excess off, and then bring the ends together, front sides together, and stitch that 1/2 inch seam along here, and then finish stitching it around your armhole. Before I finish stitching the lace around the sleeves and the bottom, I serged the edges on the seams of the lace. The last thing that I added on were these wooden beads to the ends of the ties. For more beginners sewing clothing projects, play this video until a green screen appears and then click on the links. Okay everybody, here's your pillows. Maria, make sure your thumb is up. Jamie, the arrow's pointing to your left. Everybody ready? If you like this video, then click on thumbs up and then click on share to share this video with your friends. And if you haven't subscribed yet, then click on that red subscribe button down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Click on the bell and enter your email address. If you're not receiving those email notifications, then go to your cell phone or iPad. Click on settings and turn notifications on. This is Maria, this is Jamie, and this is Manny. And to the left, and so glad you guys came to my sewing room. See you next time, and happy sewing.
In my mom's world.